we're gonna go ahead and get started.
Okay.
So thanks everyone for coming in. We are going to operate as a subcommittee since we do not have a quorum today. Ms. Hudson is out, so I'll be chairing this committee. We're looking at the agenda real quick. We're going to take a look at the minutes. Won't be able to vote on those, obviously, because we cannot. We're going to take a look at our monthly financial report for 17. Item 4, community school deductions. We're going to have a very high-level conversation led by the treasurer on a very important topic that we've been sort of going over a lot since finance has been created and in general. It's a very important subject, and we need to start exploring that. And this is the beginning of a conversation. It's a very complex subject. It's not always very neat and clean. I personally think as a board it's important for us to understand this very large expenditure and what sort of trends and things we can take out of it to help us be prepared for future finances. So we are going to start to look at that, but this is the beginning conversation. We have some material in here that we provided to help start getting those thoughts going with folks, getting people to start thinking about what sort of things they want to ask. But for today, it's going to be a very high-level conversation, and we'll get more into that in the next few months, and that's that.
Okay.
Item 5 will be the explanation of the 27 pay year. And finally, we'll also be looking at our budget timeline, and then we will be adjourning. So if there's any questions, we can't vote on it, but we're just going to actually dive right in. Do we have any questions regarding the agenda? Perfect. All right. Well, until we do have a quorum, we're going to continue along, and we will start then with the September financial report. Mr. Treasurer?
Okay. Tonight we're looking at the financial report for the month ending September. In the handouts, I included the report for both August and September, since we had not yet reviewed the August results. But at this point, the MD&A strictly speaks to September numbers. August is gone now, but at least you have the data. Looking at total revenues and expenditures, you'll see that we're a little ahead of plan, about 5% ahead of plan on revenues, and on expenditures, we're about 3% under plan. Here are the actual numbers, and I'll give an explanation as we dig a little bit further into revenues. You'll see the property taxes are a little bit above plan. State revenues above plan, and non-operating is coming in under plan at this point. In terms of absolute dollar amounts, you can see here property taxes at about $6 million above plan. We don't anticipate, we've received second half settlement that because those are on a calendar year basis, so it's technically it's second half settlement, but the first part of this fiscal year. That's been settled. We don't anticipate any more revenue in this category through the balance of the year, and the next collection starts in January, as you well know, if you all get property tax bills. That starts in January. On the state side, that 14 million positive variance is primarily due to the fact that rollback and homestead of about 16.3 million came in. We had it in the plan for October. Believe it or not, all the departments and agencies that have to process that payment got it done sooner than they did last year, so we got it in September. Scott even said, you know, they got it done soon. That never happens. So that variance will work itself out next month. On the other operating, this is again those payments in lieu of taxes. We're not sure when they're going to arrive. I just today decided to ask if we can get a tabulation of those. It's probably not a huge, meaningful amount in the overall scheme of things, but it does cause these variances every now and then. I'm trying to get a handle if we even have an idea, talking to our law firm, do they have an idea when those payments are supposed to be made? And then I can at least factor some of that into the forecast month to month. But that's what that variance is there. 2.2 million of those payments were received through September. On the non-operating side, same explanation as always. These are those advances in and advances out. One's on the revenue side, one's on the expenditure side. And we did not change the forecast this year. We left it at 20 million each. above and below the line. We can talk maybe in May about cutting that down for the future to 15 so the variances don't look so large. But typically they offset one another. Just showing you month to month, primarily here to indicate that we are flowing on a revenue side, pretty much like we did last year. So that, using that as a basis seems to hold true for now.
Someone's
Yep.
here.
Delving into the expenditures, you can see that we're very much on target except for community schools. And when we look at the actual numbers, on 138 million in expenditures, or on 136 million in actual expenditures, we're within $1.8 million on personnel, so that's very good. And we are watching that 27 plan impact. We will use September payrolls now to recast our payroll forecast for the year, since September is the first month that we've got everybody on the new schedule for this fiscal year. Everybody's been bumped up, salary increases are included, positions have been realigned, new staff is on board, so we'll use that as a basis to see where the balance of the year will go. We'll do that soon. On the non-personnel side, we're about 9.4% over plan. Purchase services are running over. Supplies and materials are running under. Capital outlay a little bit over. I'm not really worried about this differential right now. It's all controlled by appropriations, so it's not like we're going to run through our budget and have to increase the appropriations at the end of the year. That's not what's going on. So there's nothing remarkable to cause the month-to-month difference. On the community schools, and this we may want to segue into the other report real quick, just because I provided that to tie this number out so you can see what we look at in terms of where do we get the annual number. The plan assumes a fairly even flow, a little bit smaller up front, and it kind of, right, I think it starts out in the about 14-some million a month, and then gets up to about 15 million, 16 million a month at the end, but it's fairly even month to month. We have 180 million appropriated. I wish it was 180,000. 180 million appropriated. Right now, the data from ODE indicates about 166 million. So you have a report that looks like that in your packet. And this is just a few pages of the, what we call the SFPR report, School Foundation Payment Report. And the first page shows you the aggregate calculation for the school district, and you can see what we're calculated and what we're capped at. But if you go down, I've marked them lines UVW, community school transfer, STEM schools transfer, and scholarship transfer. Those three lines total $166,269,013 right now. So those are the three numbers we watch.
And just for clarification, the difference between community schools and some of the scholarship transfers are, they tend to be mostly parochial scholarships.
And you'll see them down here. So that's where we get that 166 million. What starts on the bottom of this page and then goes on for the balance of the report, you'll see the first is the list of all the schools under Ed Choice Scholarship and how much money they're getting. Unfortunately, because this is a PDF from the state, it doesn't, the titles don't repeat, so you're gonna have to kind of take a close look. But it shows you the head count of children, the FTE for children, and that are attending those schools, and the dollar amount of the transfer. And so you can see here, as you said, most of these, Our Lady of Peace, Bishop Hartley, it's a lot of them are the Christian and parochial schools.
Real quick before we dive into any other more explanation of this subject area, are you finished with the monthly financial report?
Essentially, yeah, it's just you had some graphs on what's going on month to month. And that's pretty much it. There's nothing here that would cause me to change any projections for the balance of the year.
Do we have any questions about the monthly financial report? Okay.
Okay. So you have the scholarships, then you have the Peterson Scholarship at the bottom of page 2 that begin. And then autism scholarships, one line, they don't break that out by district. And you can see that that totals $23,887,000. That ties back to line W on the first page. So there's the breakdown for that. Then we get into the community school transfer. You can see the schools, their student FTE. Each of these schools has a calculated formula just like ours. They take their students, plug them in by student category into the same type of formula. It's not exact in terms of the actual calculation, but the layout is the same. Some of the differences are, well, two very important differences. Number one, they never get multiplied by the state share index, which is an indication of wealth and our local ability to generate revenue. So the state says, we're going to allocate X dollars per student, but based upon your ability to generate dollars locally, we're only going to give you a portion of that. And our state share index is about 0.53. So they reduce us by about 47% on any one of the numbers in those lines. After that, and that's what ends up in the calculated column on page 1.
Right.
Also then, when we move from the calculated to the state funding side, the capped amount, we then get only 76% of the 53%. All right, so those two are major differences as you look at those calculations for the schools, and that's the kind of detail we'll get into later. Just to highlight two very important factors. So here's what all the schools get. I don't know if there's anyone in particular you want to call out.
Let's take a look.
Just so you know, I'll say it, ECOT is Electronic Classroom of Tomorrow, if you're looking for that one.
$11 million.
Yes, sir.
Almost 12.
And when I learned of the total amount that you could go into this portal, rather than going in through Columbus schools, you can go in through the portal as ECOT. Not as ECOT, but you look at it from a community school perspective, and then you get a report that shows all the funding for ECOT across all the districts in Ohio. So that's where I forget how much they get, 160 million or something. And that's where I figured out, well, we're about 11% of their total funding out of the state. So if they're going to claw back 60 million, that's why I said at the last board meeting, I want my 6.6 million. If we paid it to them, I want it back. I mean, I think that's what I'm supposed to do as CFO, is to say, you took it, now give it back if you get it back. And I've not gotten no one said, oh, that makes sense, yet. We haven't heard that, but that's how I came up with that. We're gonna bark up that tree, I think. At least I would like. Anyway, there it is, community schools, and on the last page, they all total out along with the STEM schools, which is just one line item. That totals, there are two lines there, the 139,549 for community school, and then for STEM school, the 2.8 million. Those tie back to lines U and V. So to answer that original question, how much is deducted and where is it going? There you go.
Got one question, Stan. And I hadn't thought about these students going to schools out of town. But I see that, these vouchers can basically go anywhere in the state. And that there are students in Akron, Toledo, wherever. I'm assuming that residence is based on the residence of the parents, basically.
Parents or guardians.
And that even if these kids are in Akron and staying there for the school year, that's okay.
but they possibly have an open enrollment district, like we do. So
Okay.
technically, someone from Toledo could come to Columbus, too, because it is an open
Okay.
enrollment district.
So those dollars not even, not only do they leave us, but they don't come back into the community as they're spent.
And you bring up a really good question, and what I would like to do, real briefly though, this subject, and I touched on it briefly, it's a huge expenditure. And like I said, I feel that it's very necessary that we understand it. And I'm sure that there is, my whole point is we need, I think as a board and as a district, it's important that we understand this so that we know what our parameters are. You know, the law is the law. And this isn't, you know, any sort of attack on charter. There are a lot of really good charter schools. But since it is such a high volume of an expenditure, I feel it's, you know, important that we look at it. But there's also another question that we have to ask ourselves. What is necessarily the return of investment on this? It's going to be nice to understand it, but again, what can we do about it? And there are some laws that, you know, you get into a whole nother area. You know, I've had some conversations with board members and people out in the community, and they say, you know, just get them on back, get those kids and contact them and get them back. Well, you know, there's some laws like that. And I'm just hoping that we, you know, use this as an opportunity to educate ourselves, but to also understand, you know, what we can and what we can't do in regards to this. So I'm hoping that's where the conversation sort of develops too as we go forward with this. It's a huge expenditure. We do have to understand it. I'd like to see some trends. I'd like to understand more of the behavior and what causes sort of things like this. And that way our district can, if needed, you know, what they could do. So with that, you know, do we have any, you know, general questions that would, you know, open-ended questions that folks may have that they'd like to, you know, discuss in the future regarding this?
Well, I mean, this is suggesting that just in community schools, there's 17,000 kids that are somewhere. And I guess the question is there, you know, is there a stronger, I guess from a tier standpoint, you know, if there's a financial benefit to having more of these kids come back to us.
Correct.
But then there's also a programmatic reality, and maybe that's part of the thought process I'm thinking about is, okay, so these kids come back, okay, what does that do to our finances, right?
Yes.
You know, obviously it should increase because you got better head count. We may have to look at efficiencies, but then do you have space for them? I mean, there's
What
a lot of
resources go into getting
the
them back?
resource, right? So I mean, there's a host of things I think would lend itself to the discussion, but this is good to show. But I'm interested in to say, you know, if you're going to take on that strategy, you know, what's a realistic timeline to do it, and then what resources do you have to commit to do that, and then how do you do that inside the law to basically recruit these kids back? And that may be a task that's just too monumental to do.
I mean, you say you put a program together that enables us to reach out to students and they decide to come back to Columbus City Schools for one reason or another. What sort of expenditure did that take? Manpower behind that? And how does that move the needle? Is it 2 or 3 kids?
Right.
You know, are we talking about hundreds, thousands? Is it just
Right.
a handful?
And the other thing
And-
is
and-
why'd you leave? I mean,
Mhm.
you know, there are various factors of why you left.
Mhm.
And are those things we can help address? And if we can, great. If we can't, you know, there's some stuff that's just, that may whittle this down to a number that you have to then say, okay, well, this is really our target group if we want to pursue it.
Yeah.
But,
I think as you delve into some of the details, you'll gain an appreciation for just what we look at from a financial perspective.
right.
And what happens when a child leaves and what happens when the child comes back. It's not as intuitively obvious as you think.
Absolutely.
It's just, thank you, it's just not. So you'll, as we get into some of the details, you'll see that. And so there may be other reasons other than financial
That's
that
right.
you would like to have students come back. I would suggest that if community schools were direct funded, we might not be having this conversation.
That's right,
And those are sort of
Because
things.
this sticks out like a sore thumb.
right.
And so you go, oh my gosh. It's $166 million. What are we doing?
Right,
And we could have that back. We'd also have the students back.
that's right.
And then we're capped. So, and
There you
just there, we have to stop. Because we've now gone beyond a high-level discussion. And there are like 240 variables in the formula.
Precisely.
And you can take a child, and we did this just the other day internally. We had a great conversation. But you have to have Dr. Klein here too, because I can talk about the funding formula. She talks about it from an EMIS student reporting perspective.
Right.
And one child can be in multiple locations on that formula. And it's just not as simple as saying, well, doggone it, let's go get those kids back.
That's right.
Hang on. Let's talk about that. And I'm not saying I don't want them back, I just want you to understand
That's right.
that it's not necessarily exactly what you think from a funding
Right.
standpoint.
Have we ever done a capacity analysis? I mean, you've got, 125 plus buildings. How many kids can we realistically absorb or handle? I mean, based on the
We
teachers
have-
we have right now, how many kids can we handle based on our
We
teachers?
have. So that, first of all, the number of things you bring up are absolutely on point in terms of analysis points to think about and look at. The deep dive was done in the ad hoc committee that he and W. Shawnee Gibbs chaired with F&P.
Okay,
There's the capacity to absorb that student base. The key thing is, though, is what is the gap between the cost that we would otherwise absorb by bringing them back versus where we're capped in terms of providing them some other services. Like he said, there's so many different variables in that algebra equation, right? One of them could be IEP services. I mean, any myriad of things, physical services that those children might need to help transport them to and from a building. So any myriad of things that factor into that. But it is figuring out what that gap is.
Yeah.
I personally I'm of the personal belief that we're gonna give them a quality education here. That, let's just throw it out, 9 times out of 10 or 8 times out of 10. Let's give the benefit of a statistical doubt, right? 8 times out of 10, we're gonna give a better quality education to those children than that charter school would, than that community school would. That's just my personal take. But I think that there's some math we could look at in the numbers. But at the end of the day, when we're talking about quality of service, I think we give it to them. Charter programs do not have to provide financially or educate children with IEPs. They have the choice of whether they want to do that or not. We don't. We have to absorb children regardless of how they come to us in the condition of learning.
yeah.
At the end of the day, so I want them here.
Mr. Chairman Pro Tem, may I?
And there are a lot of, we're gonna have a lot of questions. And like I said, this is the beginning of a discussion. I'm gonna talk to Chairwoman Hudson and the treasurer and board president, moving into the future. Because there's gonna be a lot of areas this touches on, not necessarily just areas that touch in the finance committee, but other areas too. And it's an ongoing conversation of educating ourselves. So with that, I want to park this for now and move on to the pay issue. Any other outstanding questions, just grab me, shoot me an email. But this is just the beginning of what I see as a very robust conversation that I'd like to have on this subject.
I think President Baker was trying to make some comment.
Oh, I was just, I think, going to say what Mr. Peretti just said, which is there's so many different layers and even different planes related to this
Facilities,
issue.
programmatic,
It requires a
finances.
special session of its own, perhaps a board work session, perhaps a subcommittee even, depending on how.
You could teach a class on the subject.
It is one of the biggest issues facing public education, true traditional public education in this state.
Okay, the pay calendar issue, that was brought up last time because we're showing a little bump in our expenditures in the month of June. And what I'm sharing here with you is an excerpt from a much larger file that I have to show you the several different types of pay schedules or pay calendars that we monitor. The 27 pay issue comes up simply because we're on a biweekly pay schedule. And you know, just the simple math tells you, well, there's 52 weeks in a year, and so therefore there's always 26 pays in a year. But between any start and end point, any 12-month start and end point, occasionally because of the fact that I guess the earth doesn't go around exactly in 24 hours and you know, we don't exactly have 365 days in a year, well, this calendar tends to move on it. It's like your birthday goes from being on Wednesday one year and Tuesday the next year and so forth. So these dates creep on us. So we walk through this creep because certain folks get paid always between certain periods of time, and we watch to see as a certain pay date moves to the closer to the beginning of their 12-month pay periods, then there's another pay period coming back that might move in at the tail end. So what I've done here is I've got them from FY16 through 19. I eliminate the middle years because we don't run into trouble with this first page. This is the teacher pay calendar until FY24 and 25. In the week number column, I highlight in yellow the 3 pay months, so you can see how they just look at it, how they kind of tend to creep on you. And then for each teacher's pay calendar, they get paid between September and August. I highlight all those dates, and then my spreadsheet counts them. So how many paydays are there between the 1st of September and the end of August every year? I've lined these up, how do I line? I lined these up by fiscal year, not calendar year, but I also count calendar year, just for fun. It doesn't have an impact on us, but I just do it for fun. Everybody's W-2 was a little bit bigger in 15, because we had 27 pays in 15. So you can see that we're A-okay until we get out to fiscal 24, or actually fiscal 24. And beginning in September of 23 through August of 24, we actually have 27 pays because you can see three pay months happen to fall into it. 9/1 is their first pay. 8/30 is their last pay. So it's the maximum distance you can have between the beginning and the end of that 12-month period, so you get 27 pays. What do? There's several solutions to that, but you have to sit down with unions and staff and say, there's a problem. What you don't get is your pay divided by 26, and then you get a 27th pay. That's what you don't get. Okay? That's not how this works. Right, Carolyn? The next calendar is just a different schedule. It's how administrators are paid. Their contracts begin 8/1, so we pay them between August and July. And again, same idea, and you watch, and then it's later. It's not fiscal 24, but it's fiscal 26 that we run into a potential problem with them. The last page, I just highlighted calendar year schedule just for fun. As you can see in 15, what actually happened to calendar year 15 is that the 12/31 pay of 15 was really the 1/1 pay for 16. We had to back it up. So when it backed up, it created that 27th pay in the calendar year. Nobody called me and said, geez, my W-2's off, because they didn't really know. I guess they didn't really know. I didn't notice it. You just get your W-2 and file it, but we actually had 27 pays. And you remember, that's the one I missed, and when we looked at the December statement, that it created a variance blip, and I went, yeah, I missed it. And I think the last one, I don't know why I included that. This is just a listing of all the years with problems. fiscal 15 on a calendar year basis, 17 on a fiscal year basis, 24 for teachers, 26 for admin, fiscal 27, that would be calendar year 27, we're gonna hit 27 pays, and then I think it's fiscal year 28, we'll get a 27 pay. So we've got that laid out. And it's just how the calendar works.
Sounds like you're having too much fun.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Stop it.
Well, we would prefer on our side to go to 24 pays. Hourly people don't necessarily like it, it creates a whole nother set of problems, but anytime anybody's paid on a contract, on a salary contract, 24 pays always works better.
First and 15th sort of cycle.
Yeah, typically you do like the 10th and 25th to get away from month end or
Right.
fiscal end, so you do 10 and 25 or 5 and 20, something like that. I was doing 15th and 30th, and that 30, it just creates problems with trying to get from one month to the next. When they've moved their dates for that very reason. You know, I've contemplated and kind of had some conversations about, are we willing to run two different types of pay cycles? The people who are truly hourly, just put them on a bi-weekly.
Right.
Let them, because they're clocking in and clocking out anyway.
Right.
They're on that kind of a system, and then put contract people on a different pay. Can we handle that? Because my payroll staff, some deal with hourly, some deal with contract people. So it's not like I'd be a payroll person having to do two types of jobs. And cycling through a pay now with technology, although I have never had to do it, it's not the same as it used to be.
Right.
It's more feasible to do that. I threw it out, and I'm still standing here, so that means that nobody in payroll slaughtered me
Right.
when I even suggested maybe we would contemplate that. But we're a long way off because all of this is negotiated.
Yeah.
All of this is negotiated. And, you know, we bothers us because we're the finance guys. We're the ones that have to do the stuff. Everybody else just wants a paycheck. That's okay, but that's how the 27 pay works.
Any other questions? All right, let's move on then to the budget development timeline. Mr.
And it
Goodman?
was just for reference,
Mhm.
been following up on that with the community school piece. We have some pieces in here for the finance appropriation committees you'll see in November, December, and January. We have a to be determined behind that. So if there's an area where we want to get more into a deep dive, such as community schools, that would be a place that, based on the chair and treasurer, we're welcome, the desire of the committee, what we plug in there, kind of get more into. So.
Well, we never had a quorum, and we have a monthly report. Now, how will that flow to the board?
Well, I plan on taking it to the board next week,
Okay.
simply with the explanation that just a
It was
subset
heard, right.
of the committee reviewed it.
Mhm.
I personally would prefer not delaying a public presentation on finances so we can get it out on the website and make it available. I mean, it is what it is, so I would still do that.
We'll have unofficial minutes to capacity then from this meeting?
There won't be any official minutes from this meeting, no.
Notes.
We could bring this report to the next finance committee and along with the.
It's allowed to flow to
Yeah.
the board.
You
That
can
way
approve
we keep on
that.
track, so it'll be all right. All right. Do we have any more questions, folks? It was a quick one today. No? Well, with that, I'm gonna look to adjourn. I appreciate everyone taking the time to come in today and putting up with me. And thank you for your time. And like I said, as we go down this conversation, dealing with the charter school piece,
Go ahead.
our lines are always open. Feel free, like give me an email on MJ, sort of things that, questions that you have as we start to sort of think, because we also have to think as a board, what the board is looking to get from this. And like I said, the ROI on this effort. I want to know things, sure, but I only have so much bandwidth and time, and there are other things going on. So those are some sort of things that we have to contemplate, but it is a very important conversation. I expect us to have more. So. All right,
Thank you.
we're adjourned. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you much.
everyone.